Неожиданный маневр. Что это? Unexpected maneuver. What is that? Sharp climb. Emergency. Emergency.
Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're plunging headfirst into an era of, well, almost unbelievable technological ambition. The dawn of the supersonic age.
An absolutely fascinating period.
We've gathered a stack of fascinating sources, everything from meticulous historical accounts to detailed technical analyses, and even some raw, unfiltered public commentary from the time to really extract the most important nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Our mission today is to truly understand the intense global race to conquer the skies. We're focusing on a spectacular demonstration that tragically culminated in sudden, unimaginable disaster and the profound, lingering questions that still echo decades later. Get ready, because this is, well, it's quite a story.
It really is a moment indelibly etched into aviation history, and for good reason. You mentioned a spectacular demonstration ending in tragedy. Can you maybe set the scene for us? What exactly unfolded at the Paris Air Show back in 1973?
Absolutely. Okay, imagine this. You're at Le Bourget Airport, just outside Paris.
Right.
It's Sunday, June 3rd, 1973.
Okay.
The atmosphere was absolutely electric. The Paris Air Show, the world's largest air show and aerospace industry exhibition, was in full swing.
The big one?
Exactly. This was the place where nations showcase their aeronautical might, their latest and greatest flying machines. And the anticipation for groundbreaking displays was, well, you could feel it, especially with two particular aircraft set to perform. The Anglo-French Concorde and its Soviet counterpart, the Tupolev Tu-144.
Ah, yes, the Supersonic showdown. That was pretty much the unofficial theme of the day, wasn't it?
It really was.
And the Tu-144, often nicknamed Concordsky by Western journalists because, let's face it, it looked strikingly similar to Concorde.
It did. Very similar.
It had already stolen a bit of a march on its Western rival. It was the first civilian SST to actually fly back on December 31st, 1968.
Beat Concorde into the air, yeah.
And it famously became the first commercial aircraft to exceed Mach 2 back in May 1970. So you can imagine there was immense pride and maybe, just maybe, a touch of competitive pressure on its crew to put on an unforgettable show for the world.
Oh, definitely. And on that fateful Sunday, June 3rd, the Tu-144, specifically the second production model, registration I-77102, took to the skies for its second demonstration flight of the show.
Right.
The crew of 6 was led by the Soviet test pilot Mikhail Vasilyevich Kozlov. They started their display with several minutes of pretty impressive aerobatic maneuvers, really demonstrating the aircraft's capabilities. The crowd was loving it.
Showing what it could do.
Exactly. Then the sequence of events that would just shock the world began. The Tu-144 performed a high-speed pass above the runway. Landing gear out, canards extended.
Okay. A show of control at lower speed, maybe?
Yeah, a powerful display of speed and control, it seemed. But then, almost immediately after, with its engines roaring at full power, it went into this incredibly steep, rapid climb.
Wow. Okay. That's unusual for an airliner demo.
Very. You can almost feel the tension building just thinking about it, can't you?
You absolutely can. And this is where the unthinkable happened, as you said. Walk us through that precise, agonizing sequence. What did witnesses see? What did investigators piece together?
Well, it was just a cascade of catastrophic failure. The aircraft was below 2,000 feet, so about 600 meters.
Pretty low.
Yeah, when it appeared to stall, it just fell into this steep, almost vertical dive.
Oh, my God.
At a mere 400 feet, that's like 120 meters above the ground, the pilot, Kozlov, attempted this desperate pull-out maneuver.
Yeah.
Full engine power engaged.
Trying to save it.
Trying desperately. But the aircraft, it had reached its absolute structural and aerodynamic limits. Probably exceeded them in the climb.
The forces must have been just immense.
Beyond comprehension, really.
Yeah.
At that critical moment, the entire left wing outboard of the left-hand engines just broke away.
Snapped off.
Just gone. Imagine the sheer violence of that. The aircraft then snap-rolled violently to the left, turning completely upside down, inverted. Overload stresses, just cascading through the airframe, fractured the fuselage right forward of the wing. And then, horrifyingly, fuel tanks must have ruptured because fuel vapor ignited. The whole thing just broke apart in midair.
It wasn't just a crash, it was a complete disintegration.
A total catastrophic disintegration right there, right before thousands of onlookers.
In the human cost. It wasn't just the crew, was it? This happened over a populated area.
Tragically so. The disintegrating aircraft rained down in flames onto the quiet town of Goussainville, about 8 kilometers north of Le Bourget.
Right into the town.
The impact was utterly destructive. 15 houses were completely destroyed. All 6 crew members on board the Tu-144 were killed instantly.
Then on the ground.
8 people lost their lives, just bystanders, people in their homes, including 3 innocent children.
Oh, that's horrific.
And another 60 people received severe injuries. There's this one image, I read about it in one of the accounts, this really poignant image. Just empty stairs leading to nowhere after the crash. A stark, chilling reminder of lives just snuffed out, homes annihilated.
Unbelievable. Just devastating.
It truly was a shocking, visceral moment, a devastating twist in what was already this high-stakes, thrilling global competition. But our deep dive today isn't just about recounting the tragedy, as awful as it was. We're here to unpack why it mattered so much, How does it fit into the broader story of the supersonic age?
Right. The context is crucial.
And we need to explore the official story and maybe some of the unofficial theories behind this profound and enduring mystery. Because in an era defined by fierce technological rivalry, this wasn't just any plane crash.
No, it was far more than that.
It was a very public, very painful demonstration of that fine line between ambition and disaster.
And you could argue a real turning point for the whole supersonic transport dream, at least in the public eye.
So let's unpack this. Let's set the historical stage. Because to understand the Tu-144 crash, you really need to understand the intense global race that led up to it.
Definitely.
We're talking the 1960s, a decade where the Cold War wasn't just, proxy wars or the space race. It extended right into the skies of commercial aviation.
Absolutely. There was this immense fascination with speed, this almost insatiable drive to create the fastest passenger aircraft in the world.
It was a race for speed, sure, but it was also about prestige, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Technological dominance.
Exactly. Supersonic transport, or SST, became more than just an engineering challenge. For both the West and the Soviet Union, it morphed into this powerful symbol.
A symbol of national prestige.
And technological prowess. It was a race not just to move people faster, but to prove which system, which ideology could push the boundaries of human ingenuity further. It really reflected this global optimism in technology, this belief that, any barrier could be smashed with enough brains and resources.
Okay, so on the Western side, this ambition really kicked off the UK, right? At the Royal Aircraft Establishment, the RAE.
That's right. In February 1954, they formed the Supersonic Transport Aircraft Committee, STAC they called it, to study if SST was even feasible. Their first report came out in April 55.
And what were the initial hurdles? What did those early studies actually say about building a supersonic passenger jet?
Well, the early findings were, frankly, pretty pessimistic. A major challenge was just dealing with drag at supersonic speeds. Research, particularly Robert T. Jones's pioneering work over at NACA, that's the precursor to NASA.
Right.
His work showed that drag was really strongly related to wingspan. So the less span, the less drag at high speed. This pushed designs towards these short span, thin, sort of trapezoidal wings. Think like the F-104 starfighter wing.
Okay, I can picture that. But what's the downside?
The huge downside is those short wings produce very little lift at low speeds, which means you need incredibly long takeoff runs and dangerously high landing speeds. Just totally impractical for commercial airports back then. So the initial conclusion from STAC was that an SST would need to be, and this is a quote, horribly large aeroplanes with enormous engine power just to get off existing runways.
It's horribly large.
Yeah. And the amount of fuel needed for such a massive aircraft just made the whole concept seem economically, impossible. So early on, they actually suggested just keeping supersonic research ticking over at a low level rather than actually trying to build a full-scale aircraft.
But then, something changed. This is where it gets really interesting, right? Soon after that gloomy report, there was a breakthrough at the RAE. Thanks to these brilliant aerodynamicists, Johanna Weber and Dietrich Kuhlmann, and also Eric Maskell.
Key figures.
They published a series of reports on this revolutionary new wing idea, the slender delta. This was the aha moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Test pilot Eric Brown basically called it the birth of Concorde. What was so special about this slender delta wing?
It was genuinely game-changing. Their work showed that delta wings, when they're at a high angle of attack, nose pointed up relative to the airflow, they could produce these strong, stable vortices on their upper surfaces. Imagine like mini tornadoes of air swirling over the top of the wing.
Right.
These vortices lower the air pressure above the wing and, crucially, generate significant extra lift. This dramatically improved low-speed performance. Suddenly, you could have reasonable takeoff and landing speeds, which the earlier short-wing designs just couldn't manage.
So that solved the low-speed problem.
Exactly. Weber realized the lift from these vortices increased with the wing's length, so the idea was to extend it as far as possible along the fuselage. That gives you that distinctive long delta shape we associate with Concorde. This unique layout could keep excellent supersonic performance and provide the needed lift at lower speeds. Problem solved, basically.
Okay, so with this new understanding, STAC, the committee, started sketching out designs that actually looked viable. What did they come up with?
They envisioned two main models. First, a transatlantic Mach 2 version carrying maybe 150 passengers. Estimated development cost was around 75 to 90 million pounds, aiming for service by 1970.
Ambitious timeline.
Very. The other was a shorter range, maybe Mach 1.2 version, for about 100 passengers. Projected cost £50 to 80 million, ready perhaps by 1968. To hit this aggressive schedule, they figured development needed to start in 1960 with production contracts signed by 62.
Wow, they were moving fast. Why the rush?
There was a real sense of urgency. The UK was genuinely worried that the US was already deep into a similar project and that they might get locked out of the future airliner market if they didn't act super fast. Competition was fierce, even in these early stages. And the sense of fierce international competition, that directly led to the Anglo-French partnership, didn't it?
It did. France had its own SST plans cooking. Sud Aviation was working on the Super Caravelle, a Mach 2 design, pretty similar conceptually to what the British were thinking.
Right.
Now, what's really fascinating, maybe a bit cloak and dagger, is the alleged secret sharing that supposedly sealed the deal.
Yes, the story goes.
The story goes that the original STAC report, which was explicitly marked for UK eyes only,
Top secret stuff.
apparently it was passed to France in secret, sort of a political move to gain favor. Sud Aviation then supposedly made some minor tweaks to the British design and presented it as their own work.
A bit cheeky, if true.
Whether that's exactly how it happened or not, this political maneuvering, or maybe just shared interest, effectively paved the way for partnership talks in April 1960. And that led to the collaboration we know.
So it became a full-blown government treaty, French and British governments combining the efforts of their big aerospace companies, Aerospace and the British Aircraft Corporation, to build what would eventually become Concorde.
And while the initial cost estimate was, a relatively modest $70 million back in '62.
Famous last words in aerospace projects.
Right, it famously soared. By 1976, the cost was somewhere between 1.5 and 2.1 billion.
Billion. This is a bit of an overrun.
Just a tad. And this massive cost overrun was cited as a primary reason for the pretty small production run. Only 20 aircraft were ever built. Interestingly, a committee that reviewed the project early on actually rejected the initial economic arguments for it.
But they still went ahead.
But they still concluded the project should go ahead.
Yeah.
Mainly because it seemed like everyone else was going supersonic, and they were worried about being excluded from future markets. It was a prestige project, almost regardless of the cost.
Fascinating. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Americans had equally grand ambitions, right? But they faced a whole different set of problems.
They did. The U.S. government funded its own SST project. There were competing designs, most notably Boeing's 2707, which had this cool swing wing design.
Very sci-fi looking.
And Lockheed's L2000, which had more of a compound delta wing. Ultimately, the Boeing 2707 was selected for development. And these American designs, they were envisioned to be much larger than Concorde, seating for up to 300 people, reflecting that huge U.S. domestic market.
But the U.S. felt it had to do this, didn't it? It wasn't just about market share.
No, there was this undeniable compulsion. Some historians call it a period of technological hysteria. America dominated the subsonic market with Boeing and Douglas.
Yeah.
And with other nations clearly pushing ahead with supersonic plans, the U.S. felt it absolutely had to rise to the challenge. They couldn't bear the thought of being left behind in what everyone saw as the next frontier of aviation. A real fear of losing technological leadership.
But there were warnings right from the start, even from the top.
Oh, absolutely. Significant warnings. In his 1963 proposal for the SST project, President Kennedy himself laid out some major dangers.
Really? What did he say?
He pointed out that, one, the technological problems might not actually be satisfactorily overcome. Two, the SSC might not have satisfactory economics. And remember, the Stanford Research Institute had already concluded there was no economic justification for it.
Ouch.
And crucially, number three, sonic boom overpressures would result in undue public disturbance. These weren't minor footnotes. They were fundamental questions about viability and public acceptance. Almost prophetic looking back.
And that public disturbance part, the sonic boom, that wasn't theoretical, was it? The military had already given people a taste.
No joke at all. The U.S. military had already provided a very loud preview with aircraft like the Mach 3 plus XB-70 Valkyrie prototypes and the B-58 Hustle bomber.
Fast, loud planes.
Exactly. These flights showed that sonic booms absolutely reached the ground, often with really startling intensity. Those Oklahoma City sonic boom tests in 1964 were particularly telling.
What happened there?
Over 6 months, residents experienced 8 sonic booms a day. 8, the result. A staggering 15,000 complaints, over 9,000 claims for property damage, and more than 4,900 lawsuits against the Air Force.
Wow. Okay, so that's concrete evidence of widespread annoyance and actual damage. No wonder environmental concerns started bubbling up.
Precisely. And this is where public opposition really started to get organized. And it turned out to be surprisingly effective.
Yeah, tell us about that. How did that movement start?
In 1967, Dr. William A. Shercliffe, described as a soft-spoken Bostonian, but with his impressive background, Manhattan Project, Polaroid.
Serious credentials.
He decided to actively organize against the sonic boom. He teamed up with an eminent Harvard biologist, John T. Edsall, and they founded the Citizens League against the sonic boom, or CLASB, in March 1967.
CLASB.
Okay. Shercliffe's efforts were relentless and remarkably effective for, a grassroots organization. He distributed these vivid bang zone maps showing areas that would get regular sonic booms. They got widely reproduced, scare the public.
Smart tactic.
His SST Sonic Boom Handbook sold over 100,000 copies to the public, and he personally mailed thousands more to congressmen, airline officials, basically arming the opposition with facts and harnessing public sentiment.
That's amazing. A small group taking on this huge government project.
It's truly fascinating. CLASB, this small, privately funded group, ended up providing the majority of financial support for the fight against the American SST, and about a third of the support for the anti-Concorde effort in Britain, too.
Incredible. And it wasn't just the noise, right? Other environmental concerns came up, too.
Yeah. Beyond the boom, scientists started raising serious questions about the engine exhaust. These planes would cruise way up high, 60,000, 70,000 feet.
Higher than regular jets.
Much higher.
Yeah.
And there were growing concerns that water vapor and nitrogen oxides pumped out up there could damage the ozone layer, our critical shield against harmful UV radiation.
A very early environmental impact concern.
And then there was the economic side, the fuel consumption. The numbers were truly stark. Some estimated that a fleet of 500 SSTs, flying, say, 3 transatlantic round trips a day each, would burn about 1.2 billion pounds of fuel per day.
Billion? How much is that in context?
That's almost the same amount of fuel consumed by all 105 million motor vehicles in the entire United States at the time.
Good grief. That's staggering. The environmental and fuel efficiency arguments must have become impossible to ignore.
They really did. And these arguments built significant political pressure. President Nixon, in December 1970, he made this passionate plea to Congress to reverse the Senate's disapproval of the SST.
What was his argument?
He warned of losing 150,000 jobs immediately across aerospace and other industries. He called the Senate's rejection a devastating mistake and warned it could be a mortal blow to our aerospace industry for years. He argued it would relegate the U.S. to second place in a vital technological area, really playing that national prestige card hard.
But the opposition held firm.
The congressional debate was intense. Senator William Proxmire was a key opponent, relentlessly hammering the environmental and economic flaws. The Department of Transportation even tried to spin the numbers.
How so?
They claimed the SST would be twice as productive as a Boeing 747. But this was, frankly, highly misleading. It conveniently ignored the SST's much shorter range, its almost non-existent cargo capacity, and its way higher fuel consumption per passenger.
Creative accounting, maybe?
Pretty much. So despite all the aggressive industry lobbying and the president's appeals, the U.S. government ultimately canceled its SST project in 1971.
Wow. After spending how much?
Over $1 billion, without a single aircraft even being built.
$1 billion down the drain. That cancellation wasn't just a political loss, was it? It sent a powerful message.
It really did. A powerful early lesson for governments everywhere. Even immense national prestige and technological ambition can't always override potent public environmental concerns and, well, fundamentally dodgy economics. It marked a turning point where environmental activism proved it could actually halt these massive industrial projects.
Okay, so with the U.S. officially out of the supersonic passenger game, the stage was really set for the 2 remaining contenders, the Anglo-French Concorde and the Soviet Tupolev Tu-144.
The showdown was on. Let's dive into what made Concorde such an icon and how its Soviet counterpart, the Concordski, measured up, or perhaps didn't measure up.
Right. Concorde, for many people, it still is the ultimate symbol of supersonic flight. Just a truly stunning piece of engineering and, let's be honest, aesthetic.
Beautiful aircraft.
Absolutely. Its design was so sleek, so unique. Tailless, narrow fuselage, typically seating between 92 and 128 passengers, 4 across. It had that distinctive ogival delta wing, that shape we talked about, providing performance at both high and low speeds thanks to vortex lift. And of course, that iconic droop nose, essential for pilots to actually see the runway during landing and taxiing.
And what about under the skin?
Yeah.
The power, the materials,
Yeah.
handling those incredible speeds and the heat generated.
Powering it were 4 massive Rolls-Royce Snecma Olympus 593 turbojets. These had advanced variable engine intake ramps crucial for supersonic efficiency and powerful reheat or afterburners to get it through the sound barrier and accelerate quickly.
So it could supercruise, fly supersonic without afterburners.
Yes, that was key. It could supercruise at Mach 2.02, about 2,150 kilometers per hour for about 75% of a transatlantic trip without needing those fuel-guzzling afterburners running continuously. Huge advantage.
And the structure, what was it made of?
A key choice was aluminum alloy. This was a careful compromise between weight and temperature resistance. Faster planes like the SR-71 Blackbird used titanium, but that was hugely expensive and difficult to work with. Aluminum kept costs somewhat manageable for Concorde, although it did limit its maximum speed compared to military jets. But still, it pushed the boundaries for a commercial airliner, operating way up high, maximum cruise altitude of 18,300 meters, that's 60,000 feet.
And technologically, it was way ahead of its time, wasn't it? Fly-by-wire.
It was. Concorde was the very first airliner to adopt an analog fly-by-wire flight control system.
Analog, right. Not digital like today.
No, analog, but still revolutionary. It gave pilots incredible precision and control, which was vital for such a complex supersonic design where traditional heavy mechanical controls would have been a nightmare. Its avionics also used unique hybrid circuits, a marvel of miniaturization back then.
And managing the balance, the center of gravity, must have been tricky at different speeds.
Absolutely crucial. As the aerodynamic center shifted between subsonic and supersonic flight, they had to manage the aircraft's center of gravity. They did this with a complex fuel transfer system, pumping fuel between different tanks forward and backward to maintain stability. Really clever stuff.
And the brakes. I heard they were special too.
They were. First airliner to use carbon-based brakes. Revolutionary at the time, saved about 1,200 pounds of weight compared to traditional steel brakes. They were cooled by electric fans. Important because its takeoff speed was blistering 250 miles per hour. Incredibly fast.
So operationally, it was designed for those long transatlantic hops.
Purpose-built for it. It needed the greatest supersonic range of any aircraft. It used this efficient cruise climb profile, slowly climbing from maybe 45,000 feet up to 60,000 feet as it burned off fuel during the crossing. Optimized efficiency.
And it had its own lanes in the sky.
Pretty much. Exclusive, dedicated oceanic airways, kept it separate from the slower subsonic traffic on the North Atlantic tracks lower down, ensured safety and optimized its unique flight path.
What about the passenger experience? We hear about the champagne, but what was it actually like inside?
Unique is the word. Single class, typically 100 seats. The seats themselves were admittedly narrow, about 16.5 inches.
Cozy.
Yeah, and limited hand luggage space.
Yeah.
Not your sprawling wide-body experience, but up front, there was this cool plasma display showing altitude, outside temperature, and crucially, the speed, including the Mach number. A real novelty for passengers, seeing you were flying faster than sound.
And despite the narrow seats, the service was apparently top tier. Free champagne, miniature silverware. Felt exclusive.
Definitely. Passengers would feel a short, sustained acceleration as they crossed the sound barrier, the pilot often announced it, and flying at twice the altitude of conventional jets, you could genuinely see the curvature of the Earth. Turbulence was rare up there, too.
And pilots apparently loved flying it. Said it handled like a fighter jet.
That description comes up a lot. It was incredibly responsive for its size, able to decelerate from Mach 1.9 down to Mach 0.7 in just 20 seconds. That's remarkable agility for a passenger airliner.
But all this came at a price. A huge price tag.
Astronomical. We mentioned the cost overrun earlier, $70 million estimated in 62, ballooning to $1.5 to $2.1 billion by 76. That soaring cost was the main reason only 20 were built. It meant tickets had to be incredibly expensive, limiting it to, well, the very wealthy, celebrities, and business executives.
Still, despite the cost, it had a remarkably successful run, didn't it? from 76 to 2003, mostly London, Paris to New York, Washington.
Very successful operationally. And importantly, before that tragic crash in 2000, it was arguably the safest operational passenger airliner in the world, with 0 passenger deaths in over 25 years of service.
But it wasn't entirely incident-free before 2000.
No, there were other incidents that highlighted its unique challenges. There were 2 non-fatal structural failures of the rudder at supersonic speed, one in '89, one in '92.
What caused those?
Both times, it was the skin separating from the internal rudder structure. Investigations pointed to issues with moisture getting in, or problems with repair materials, required extensive repairs. And there was also this notably high rate of tire damage, apparently 30 times higher than subsonic jets between '95 and 2000, often caused by small debris on runways, which became critical later.
Which brings us to Air France Flight 4590. July 25, 2000, the only fatal accident.
The single fatal crash. It went down in Gonesse, France, just after taking off from Charles de Gaulle, killed all 109 people on board plus 4 people on the ground in the hotel it hit.
And the cause was traced back to runway debris, wasn't it?
Yes, the official investigation concluded it was caused by a metallic strip, a wear strip, that had fallen off a Continental Airlines DC-10, which had taken off just minutes before.
Just bad luck.
Horribly bad luck. This fragment punctured a tire on Concorde's left main landing gear during its high-speed takeoff run. The tire exploded violently. A large chunk of that bursting tire flew up and struck the underside of the wing, rupturing a fuel tank.
And the leaking fuel ignited.
Instantly. Caused a massive fire, catastrophic engine failure. The aircraft couldn't gain altitude or speed. It pitched up, then descended rapidly, rolled left, and crashed. It led to the grounding of the whole fleet, significant safety improvements, Kevlar lining for fuel tanks, burst-resistant tires, better electrical controls before it briefly flew again. But the damage was done psychologically and economically.
Okay, so that's the Concorde story. Now let's turn to its rival, the Tupolev Tu-144. The Concorde ski.
Right, and it does hold some significant firsts. You have to give it that. First civilian SST to fly December 31st, '68, beat Concorde. And first commercial aircraft to exceed Mach 2 May 1970. So for a while, the Soviets could definitely claim they were ahead in this particular race.
But that nickname, Concorde ski, it wasn't just because it was Soviet, right? It looked incredibly similar.
Strikingly similar, which naturally raised a lot of eyebrows in the West. Sources strongly suggest, and it's widely believed, though perhaps hard to prove definitively, that Soviet espionage efforts managed to steal Concorde blueprints to help with the Tu-144 design.
Industrial espionage in the sky race.
Seems likely. However, despite that external resemblance, most accounts describe the Tu-144 as being, well, cruder than Concorde, largely due to its rushed development program. The intense political pressure to beat the West meant corners were likely cut.
And those technical differences, the crudeness, had real-world consequences, didn't they? How did it really differ under the skin?
Crucially, it had significantly shorter range than Concorde, a major drawback.
Why was that?
It seems its engine's heavier, lower bypass turbofans compared to Concorde's Olympus engines reportedly needed constant afterburning just to maintain supersonic cruise speed. Concorde could supercruise efficiently without afterburners for most of the trip.
So the Tu-144 was guzzling fuel constantly at Mach 2.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Which massively impacted its range and its commercial viability, made transatlantic flights really difficult, if not impossible, without multiple refueling stops. It also reportedly had poorer control characteristics at low speeds, partly due to a simpler, less refined wing design.
And didn't it need parachutes to land?
Yes, notoriously required braking parachutes for landing. That suggests either less effective wheel brakes or higher landing speeds, or maybe both. And critically, many sources point to an inherently unsafe structural design.
Inherently unsafe. How?
Possibly resulting from automated production methods that were chosen maybe to simplify and speed up manufacturing. The rush to be first seems to have compromised fundamental engineering integrity.
That sounds worrying.
Yeah.
And this inherent fragility, the operational inefficiency, that explains its commercial failure.
Massively contributed to it, yes. Passenger service for the Tu-144 finally began in November 1977, but it was incredibly short-lived and troubled.
How short-lived?
After a second major crash in 1978, this one was a pre-delivery test flight, not a passenger flight, but still.
Another crash.
Yes. After that, it was taken out of passenger service entirely. It had only completed 55 scheduled passenger flights in total.
Only 55, that's it.
That's it. Carrying an average of just 58 passengers per flight, which tells you something about its reliability or maybe passenger confidence. The whole program was officially canceled by the Soviet government on July 1st, 1983.
So while it grabbed those early headlines, being first to fly, first to Mach 2, its actual career as a passenger plane was incredibly brief and plagued by problems.
Exactly. It won the race to get airborne first, maybe even using borrowed homework. But that rush to market ultimately became its Achilles heel. It led to a temperamental aircraft that just failed commercially because of fundamental compromises on safety, reliability, and efficiency. Things Concorde, despite its own challenges, largely overcame for its operational life.
Okay, so you've got this intense Cold War backdrop, the space race is raging, and now the civilian supersonic race is in full swing. You have Concorde, the sophisticated, expensive Western standard bearer, and the Tu-144, the Soviet challenger first out of the gate, but seemingly rushed and flawed.
A fascinating contrast.
Which brings us right back to that ultimate stage, the Paris Air Show, 1973, Le Bourget.
Right. And the Paris Air Show isn't just any trade show. It's steeped in aviation history. It's the biggest, the oldest. It's the place nations go to strut their stuff, aeronautically speaking. A grand stage for technological supremacy.
And in 73, with both Concorde and the Tu-144 scheduled to perform demonstration flights, the atmosphere must have been absolutely electric. It was, as you said, a supersonic showdown.
Every flight was a direct comparison, a subtle or maybe not so subtle battle for hearts, minds, and ultimately for potential future aircraft orders. The prestige was enormous.
And you have to remember the Concordski had already hit Mach 2 first. It had flown first. It was carrying the weight of Soviet national pride. There was this palpable buzz, this excitement, but probably also immense pressure on Kozlov and his crew to really deliver a showstopper that day.
The world was watching, quite literally. Thousands at the airfield, millions more through news reports.
Indeed. It all came to a head on that Sunday, June 3rd, 1973. The Tu-144, that second production model, ADSM 7102, takes off for its second demo flight. 6 crew, led by test pilot Mikhail Kozlov. They're under huge pressure, not just to fly, but to impress. Kozlov and his crew start with several minutes of aerobatics, really demonstrating the aircraft's capabilities, maybe pushing the envelope a bit for a commercial airliner design.
Showing off its agility.
Perhaps. And then comes that sequence we discussed. The high-speed pass, gear down, canards out, a display of power and control. But then immediately after, engines roaring into that incredibly steep, rapid climb.
The maneuver that raised eyebrows.
Exactly. Unexpected, aggressive for such a large aircraft. It immediately made seasoned observers uneasy.
And this is where it all went horribly wrong. That cascade of failure we described earlier. The climb, the stall below 2,000 feet, the terrifying dive.
And Kozlov's desperate pull-out attempt at just 400 feet. Full power. But the aircraft has already passed its limit, likely overstressed during that climb and dive sequence.
And then the wing breaks off.
The entire left wing, outboard of the engines, just gone. The snap roll left, fully inverted. The fuselage fracturing.
The fireball.
The fireball as the fuel ignites. The plane just disintegrating in midair, showering flaming wreckage over the horrified crowd in the town below.
And crashing into Goussainville. The 15 houses destroyed, the 6 crew killed, the 8 people on the ground, including those 3 children, the 60 injured. An absolute catastrophe.
So immediately, as the smoke clears, the investigations begin. The huge question isn't just what happened. The sequence was tragically clear. The question was why.
Right. Why did this cutting-edge Soviet marvel, the world's first civilian SST, just break apart like that in front of everyone?
What was the official explanation, and what were the theories, the speculation that started swirling almost immediately and continued for years?
Well, the official stance, which came out in a pretty terse communique about 8 months later, it was remarkably vague, almost evasive, you could say.
What did it actually conclude?
French and Soviet investigators apparently unanimously concluded that, quote, no abnormality had been found in the Tu-144's design.
No abnormality after it broke up in midair.
Exactly. Instead, they suggested that, quote, intervention of the human factor is therefore most likely. But then they ultimately declared the cause unidentified.
Unidentified. That leaves a lot of room for doubt.
It certainly did. Especially given what we now suspect or know about the aircraft's potential design flaws and the immense pressures of that Cold War competition, it left many, many questions unanswered in the public mind.
And you can bet there was plenty of speculation filling that vacuum, especially from, public commentary, aviation forums, enthusiasts. Our sources highlight this quite a bit. What was the dominant theory?
The dominant theory, the one you hear most often, points directly to pilot error, specifically an attempt to show off.
Kozlov trying to outdo Concorde.
That's the thinking. that Mikhail Kozlov, feeling the weight of national pride and the head-to-head competition, wanted to demonstrate the Tu-144's superior capabilities compared to Concorde, which had flown a smoother, less aggressive display earlier.
So he pushed it too hard.
The theory is he pushed the aircraft beyond its design limits with that aggressive climb, and then the desperate pull-out maneuver overstressed the airframe, causing it to disintegrate. There's even a comment referencing the legendary American test pilot Bob Hoover, who apparently believed the intense rivalry led Kozlov to attempt something the plane simply couldn't handle. Hoover noted Concorde's steep but controlled climb, and then Kozlov trying an even steeper one, ultimately fatally trying to outdo his rival.
That pilot error idea seems plausible, given the context. Does it connect to anything else, like their training?
It does, potentially. This ties into another key speculation, the impact of their training methods. Sources indicate the Soviets used modified MiG-21 fighter jets, specifically the MiG-21I, which had a tailless delta wing similar to the Tu-144's, to train their pilots.
Okay, training on a delta wing makes sense. What's the problem?
While useful for getting pilots familiar with delta wing handling, the concern is that maybe this training inadvertently led pilots to expect that a huge, heavy passenger plane could perform maneuvers more suited to a small, nimble fighter jet.
A mismatch between the training aircraft and the real thing.
Exactly. As one commentator put it quite bluntly, you try doing the same maneuvers one of the lightest and most nimble fighters of the 50s and 60s can do in a full-size passenger aircraft, and shit goes south way too fast. That potential disconnect between fighter training and transport reality certainly seems like a possible contributing factor to Kozlov's decision-making in that high-pressure competitive moment.
Okay, now, we should probably touch on some of the more, let's say, out-there theories that floated around, especially in online discussions later on. The sabotage idea, the chase plane.
Right, those come up. The theory that a French Mirage fighter jet, maybe filming the flight, got too close, forcing Kozlov into a sudden evasive maneuver that overstressed the plane. Or even more extreme, outright sabotage.
Is there any evidence for that?
It's crucial to stress there's overwhelming skepticism and a real lack of credible evidence for these theories. Many aviation experts just dismiss them. For one thing, no chase plane is clearly visible in any of the crash footage performing such a maneuver. And the alleged evasive action described doesn't really make aerodynamic sense based on where a case plane would likely be positioned. It often feels more like a dramatic narrative created to fill the void left by that official unidentified cause.
Okay, so maybe less cloak and dagger, more fundamental issues. What about the plane itself? You mentioned earlier sources pointing to structural weaknesses. How does that fit with the official no abnormality line?
Yes, that's the key counterpoint, and it's widely discussed in our sources and commentary. Despite the official report saying no abnormality, many sources, including those Reddit comments we looked at, consistently refer to the Tu-144 having an inherently unsafe structural design and suffering from catastrophic structure failure.
So directly contradicting the official finding.
Directly. This aligns much more closely with the idea that the aircraft was cruder than Concorde, possibly due to that rush development we discussed. The push to be first might have meant that vital, rigorous testing was skipped or skimped on, leading to a substandard product, as some sources strongly suggest.
That phrase you mentioned earlier really sticks out.
The one about inherently unsafe structural design as a consequence of an automated production method chosen to simplify and speed up manufacturing.
Yes, that one. It's a critical insight, isn't it? It suggests underlying weaknesses, that maybe even without explicit pilot error in the sense of reckless showboating, the aircraft itself was vulnerable, prone to failure under the kind of stress generated by any aggressive demonstration maneuver, let alone a desperate pullout.
Precisely. It suggests the margin for error might have been dangerously thin from the start.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? You have this official report, months of investigation concluding no abnormality in the design, just hinting vaguely at human factor.
Yeah.
Yet the plane clearly suffered a catastrophic structural failure in front of the whole world. What deeper secrets were held within that wreckage? What wasn't being said? And what does it truly mean when the relentless pursuit of national prestige, of being first, potentially eclipses the fundamental realities of sound engineering and, ultimately, safety?
It raises a really important question, something for you, the listener, to think about. How often in these intense technological races, whether driven by national pride or maybe corporate ambition, do the hard realities of engineering, testing, and safety get pushed aside even slightly in favor of just hitting that milestone? being first.
Yeah.
The Tu-144 crash at Paris serves as such a stark, tragic reminder of the immense pressures involved and the potential consequences when that desire to achieve, to win, overshadows the meticulous, painstaking, and frankly unglamorous work of ensuring absolute reliability and safety.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. This deep dive into the dawn of the supersonic age, the Tu-144 tragedy. It just starkly highlights the intense global competition of that era, the fascinating contrast between the competing designs like Concorde and the Concordski, and ultimately the shocking, unimaginable price that was paid when ambition perhaps outpaced practical realities.
It's a sobering reminder. While that human drive for speed and innovation can lead to incredible achievements like Concorde, it also carries immense risks if not managed with extreme caution. The legacy of the Tu-144 at the Paris Air Show isn't just about one terrible accident, it's about those broader implications of high-stakes technological competition and the absolutely critical importance of putting safety and sound engineering above absolutely everything else.
And as we've seen, this is just scratching the surface of understanding the complex legacy of the supersonic age. There's so much more to explore. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you.
We'll be back soon with more fascinating stories for the cutting edge and sometimes the tragic edge of human endeavor.